Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started this morning with that major meeting between President Biden and China's President Xi Jinping aimed at rekindling a U.S.-China relationship that would basically hit rock bottom.
Both leaders met face-to-face yesterday in California, the first time that has happened in a year. The talks lasted about 4 hours and covered a range of issues focused on the economy, the military, and more, issues that have often divided Beijing and Washington. Speaking afterward, President Biden said the countries made progress in some areas.
I believe that there are some of the most constructive and productive discussions we've had. Our meetings have always been candid and straightforward. We haven't always agreed, but they've been straightforward. And today, build on the groundwork we laid over the past several months of high-level diplomacy between our teams. We've made some important progress, I believe.
NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now from San Francisco. So, Janice, we certainly saw some positive steps on issues like restoring military communications and curbing fentanyl production. On the flip side, looks like there's still major disagreement on Taiwan. That's maybe not a huge surprise. But walk us through what did come out of yesterday's talks and what we're hearing from both sides.
Well, expectations going into the meeting were set quite low. U.S. officials were very good about communicating that in the days leading up to the summit. They confirmed the announcement on trying to curb fentanyl precursors flowing out of China into the U.S. via Mexico, and also the resumption of military-to-military confrontation. The thing is, that's low-hanging fruit in terms of what the diplomatic outcomes could have been. These are initiatives that had been in place. There were existing agreements that had been cut off in 2022 by China when Nancy Pelosi did that controversial visit to Taiwan. Taiwan still appears to be the most contentious issue between the two sides. You could tell in terms of the messaging in social media and in Chinese state media afterwards that the Chinese side was not content with what the U.S. was saying on Taiwan. They did get a commitment from President Biden that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, and there was the reiteration on the Chinese side that the U.S. would not interfere in what China sees as a domestic concern. At the same time that this was happening, there were reports from Taiwan's defense ministry that there were 10 military aircraft and 5 naval vessels that were operating near Taiwan. Military activity in the region has become normalized, and the defense ministry said that this is part of their normal training operation, but all of it suggesting that Taiwan very much remains the red line for China.
Janice, there was this controversial moment at the end of President Biden's press conference where he again called President Xi a dictator. What's been the reaction from Beijing, and were there any concerns that those comments could maybe harm any progress that had come of their discussion, their meeting?
Well, you'll remember last summer when President Biden made that comment at a private fundraiser, calling Xi Jinping a dictator. This happened literally within hours of Secretary of State Blinken finishing his visit to Beijing. At the time, President Biden didn't walk back the comments. How it came up again was in response to a question that was posed to President Biden at the press conference that he had after the meeting. Here's what he said.
He is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that's based on a form of government totally different than ours.
There hasn't been a lot of reaction on the Chinese side. There seems to be the sense that officially there is an effort underway to get U.S.-China relations back on track. When it came up at the regular briefing at China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when they were asked about it, it was brushed off in saying that people were trying to sabotage positive U.S.-China relations. Didn't name which people were trying to do that. But there does seem to be the sense officially in China that they are trying to make this reset in relations work.
Janice, after the meeting, we know President Xi addressed top U.S. business leaders and executives at a dinner there in San Francisco. What was his message to them?
Pandas. That was the message that came out of that dinner with business executives as well. Secretary Raimondo was in the crowd, and Governor Newsom. Xi Jinping was presented with some gifts, and he, in return, presented the news that there would be pandas returning to the San Diego Zoo, which will be well received here. He's also saying that China wants to extend an invitation to up to 50,000 American students over the next 5 years to come and study in China. The student numbers traditionally have been higher than what they are. 10 years ago, there were 15,000 students American students who were studying in China. Now there's about 300. So they are looking to increase what they call people-to-people exchanges as a sign that U.S.-China relations are back on track, cautiously, but back on track.
Plus a little panda diplomacy. All right, Janice, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, this morning, Israeli Defense Forces are continuing their raid on Gaza's largest hospital, leaving hundreds of patients, doctors, and caregivers stranded inside with no access to critical care. The situation inside Al-Shifa hospital, it is quickly deteriorating. The building is no longer operational. Doctors are pleading for resources, including electricity and fuel, to power incubators needed to keep dozens of premature babies alive.
Now, Israeli troops are inside Al-Shifa. They're searching for evidence that Hamas used the hospital as a shield to hide their tunnels underneath the facility. For many international organizations, the situation unfolding at the hospital is a small glimpse at the larger situation in Gaza. The World Health Organization says tens of thousands of Gazans are suffering from disease without access to clean water and waste management. But there is only one hospital left operating in the north to help those in need. Thousands have fled northern Gaza with little hope of finding relief.
NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest on this. Hey, Raf, good morning. So you were inside Gaza this week alongside the Israeli military, making you the first of our correspondents who's actually seeing people inside Gaza, seeing civilians since the war started. Walk us through what you saw along these escape routes. What stood out to you?
So, Savannah, good morning. We headed to the eastern edge of Gaza City to see what Israel's military calls a humanitarian corridor. This is one of the main roads in Gaza for Palestinian civilians fleeing south on foot, trying to get away from the fighting in Gaza City. And it was a striking and a painful scene there. We saw little children with their hands above their heads, their parents clutching their ID cards, raising them in the air as Israeli forces looked on. We saw elderly people in wheelchairs, families carrying whatever they could as they headed south to an uncertain future. From Israel's military's perspective, they see this as proof of their commitment to protecting civilians, proof that their war is only against Hamas, not the people of Gaza, and they want to get those civilians to a safer place. But guys, for many Palestinians, this looks and feels like forced displacement. This is people who feel they have no choice but to leave their homes as Israel's military closes in around Gaza City, and they have no guarantee that they will be able to return to their homes afterwards. We asked Israel's military, will these people be able to go back? They weren't able to be definitive with us. There was also this chilling moment where Israeli troops were shouting into a bullhorn in Hebrew in case there were Israeli hostages who were being smuggled in that crowd of Palestinian civilians heading south. Those forces told us they had seen no sign of the hostages so far. Guys.
Some incredible details from your reporting there, Raf. Let's talk about something you weren't able to see firsthand, the Israeli raid of Al-Shifa hospital. So what more are we learning this morning about that? And have any international agencies been able to contact those who are trapped inside?
Yeah, Joe, so the Israeli military told me as of an hour ago their raid on Al-Shifa hospital is ongoing, confirming reports from Palestinian media earlier. Now, Israel has been saying for weeks Hamas has been operating out of this hospital. It's the largest medical facility inside of the Gaza Strip. Their troops went in, and now they are presenting what they say is evidence to the world of Hamas's activity. That evidence at this point is pretty sparse. They found a number of assault rifles, ammunition, grenades. They found some laptops and various pamphlets, literature, which they say belong to Hamas. Both Israel and the United States have said Hamas is operating tunnels and a command center underneath Al-Shifa Hospital. We have not yet seen any sign of those tunnels, nor of any hostages. The Israeli military is saying, look, Hamas knew we were coming. They cleared out. They fled the area. But there is more evidence still to be found. But various human rights organizations, the World Health Organization, are saying, whatever the reality, whether Hamas is using this hospital or not, Israel has an obligation to keep the people inside safe. Guys.
Raf, quickly before we let you go, the United Nations Security Council, there was some news here yesterday. They passed their first resolution since the war broke out over a month ago, calling for extended humanitarian pauses in Gaza. Tell us about this vote and the likelihood of Israel complying.
So this is binding international law. It passed through the UN Security Council, but the world opinion that Israel really cares about is the United States. The U.S. did not vote for this resolution. It didn't use its powers to veto it either. So that is likely to be interpreted here in Israel as a sign that the U.S. wants to see more done on the humanitarian front, but it is deferring to Israel on the ground. And the consistent line from the Israeli government, from the Israeli military, has been there will be no long-term ceasefires without the release of the hostages. Guys.
All right, Raf Sanchez, thank you very much. Great reporting.
Raid inside Al-Shifa Hospital is adding to the very real life and death concerns over the use of force on medical facilities.
Although the Israeli military and U.S. intelligence have accused Hamas of working inside hospitals, experts say that certain criteria must be met before medical facilities lose the protected status granted to them under international humanitarian law.
NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter has been looking into this and joins us with more. Molly, good morning. So take us through the conflict zone where all this is happening. What kind of medical protections does a hospital have? How does a hospital lose its protected status?
Joe, Savannah, good morning. That's right. So we'll start with just showing our audience exactly where we're talking about. Of course, by this point, we're pretty familiar with the Gaza Strip. That is the northern Gaza Strip you see in this map. And you see the three main hospitals in the northern Gaza Strip. That is Al-Quds, Al-Shifa, and Indonesian hospital. Al-Shifa, as you just heard from Raf, of course, is really the center of this conversation, the center of the news today in Gaza. Al-Quds, we know, is no longer operating. We actually know that 200 people from Al-Quds walked 7 hours, you guys, to a functioning hospital down in Khan Yunis. And then this is a graphic you see. This is the setup. This is kind of the layout, a satellite image of Al-Shifa Hospital. Now, we do not have details from the IDF about exactly which buildings they have searched so far, which buildings they are currently in, or where they have currently found evidence. But I do just want to lay out to the second part of your question exactly what international law says about protection of medical facilities. And I think we have a full screen from the ICRC that talks about the specific protection of medical establishments is the general rule under IHL. That's international humanitarian law. And you did just hear from Raf very clearly. There is an obligation. Both sides, the combatants, have an obligation to keep medical facilities and the people inside safe. And this is an important bit. In case of doubt as to whether medical units of establishments are used to commit an act of harmful to the enemy, they should be presumed not to be so used. So if there is any doubt, they have to be presumed to still be protected. Now, I spoke with Professor Wolfendale, Jessica Wolfendale. She is a professor, a military ethics expert at Case Western University about all of this. We ran through a couple, I think we have one more graphic. We ran through a couple of the instances, the examples of what could be considered an act harmful to the enemy. That could be a hospital used as a base from which to launch an attack. That could be a weapons depot. That could be a center for liaison with fighting troops, or that could be a shelter for able-bodied combatants. Now, also interesting is if there is evidence, and the bar is very high, that the hospital has lost its protected status, the requirement, you guys, before an attack is a 12-hour warning.
Molly, let's talk a little bit about what we know is going on in this hospital. We've heard a little bit from IDF. I also do want to read part of a statement. This is from the head of the orthopedic department at the Al-Shifa complex. The statement they put out says the occupation forces vandalized medical equipment during their storming of Al-Shifa medical complex. We do not lack incubators for infants, but we lack safety and fuel, seemingly a reference to the fact that IDF was seen bringing incubators in, but then, of course, there's not that fuel. Walk us through, as a decision is being weighed when deciding to attack a medical facility, you know, to your point about the protected status, how that is weighed and decided on, especially with what type of activities we're hearing is happening with inside these walls.
Exactly. And I think one of the interesting points that Professor Wolfendale made to me, too, is that the situation on the ground, the exact circumstances have a lot to do with that. So you mentioned the lack of fuel, the lack of food. So if that warning comes, and that warning 12 hours before is required under international law, it has to take into account of whether the warning can actually allow for action. So is there a circumstance where people can actually safely evacuate? And you talk to doctors inside many of these hospitals over the last couple of days, and the situation has not allowed for any evacuation. The second part that any military has to think about before attacking a hospital is proportionality. So take a quick listen to what she told me. And this is Professor Wolfendale from Case Western Reserve University, specifically about the short and long-term effects.
Once medical facilities are rendered unusable by whatever kind of military operation, then that has long-term, well, actually short-term and long-term impact on the well-being and welfare of non-combatants in that whole area. So if hospitals are being routinely destroyed or denied access to necessary equipment, to fuel, to food and fuel and water, then that has this much broader impact on the civilian population that extends beyond the immediate potential victims of that.
So when we're talking about protection, you guys, when we're talking about civilian protection, we're not just talking about the patients that are currently inside, but civilians or people that may need that medical facility as the war goes on.
All right, Molly Hunter breaking it down for us. Molly, thank you so much. Flood alerts are in effect in Florida this morning with rain in the forecast around the country this weekend. Let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Angie Lassman's in studio with us. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. We've got some flood alerts still across the state of Florida. That's where it's really been busy over the past 48 hours or so, picking up in places like Miami International Airport, more than 8 inches yesterday. So we do have the flood alerts, but the good news is, especially for South Florida, most of those flood alerts have expired, but we're still dealing with some of those stretching up into Port St. Lucie, Palm Bay, Daytona Beach, along the Space Coast as well. Now, what you see in the blue there, those are wind advisories because we are still dealing with some gusty winds across portions of South Florida. So even though the rain has mostly moved out, or at least the heaviest of it has moved offshore, we're still going to see it be a little breezy. We know there's power outages there and likely still some flooded roadways across that region. Plenty of rain still moving through the state of Florida as you move a little farther north, Orlando up to Jacksonville. We've got some rain out in the Gulf of Mexico, but we're going to watch this area right here, this low pressure that's going to continue to keep it a little unsettled across the state today. Most of that rain across South Florida, not going to be all that impressive. Nothing like what it was yesterday, but even a little bit of rain might be problematic for folks that already picked up so much on those already saturated grounds. As we get into tomorrow, though, that system starts to lift north. We'll also see a cold front cross the Ohio Valley. That's going to leave us with some rain for folks in that region. But these two things will kind of merge, especially the moisture from it. You can see that it works into portions of the Northeast and New England specifically as we get into Saturday. This will bring some heavy rain and some wind and some chilly temperatures behind it. In the meantime, still watching for some flooding concerns across Florida because of all of that rain that we received yesterday, and we could see some still impressive rainfall rates today. When it comes to travel, if you're going in and out of the state of Florida, I'd mostly watch for Miami International Airport to have issues today. Tampa, Jacksonville, even up into Nashville and Cincinnati could have some minor delays with just some showers along those areas. And then I-95 is going to be one of the wet spots if you're going to be in that area. Otherwise, we've got warmth across parts of the east, guys, and above average highs in the middle of the country today.
I suppose there are some folks who are getting a start on their Thanksgiving travel now, right?
Why not? Beat the rush.
Make it a week.
Yeah, if you've got the week. Yeah, you're right.
Thanks,
All
Angie.
right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.